The crowd gasped as Eliza Montgomery, the notoriously cold-hearted CEO of Montgomery Industries, locked eyes with single father Jake Reynolds across the charity gala. "Look, the couple who kisses the longest wins," she announced with a smirk, her voice carrying through the stunned silence. Jake, still wearing his name tag from the catering staff, replied without missing a beat, "Do you want to try it?" Little did they know, that impulsive challenge would change both their lives forever. And reveal the devastating secret Eliza had been hiding from everyone, including herself. Jake Reynolds wiped his brow as he finished arranging the last of the appetizer trays. This catering gig at the annual Montgomery Foundation Charity Gala wasn't his usual Friday night plan, but the extra cash would help cover Lily's dance lessons. At 35, being a single dad to an 8-year-old while running his struggling bakery wasn't exactly how he'd pictured his life, but he wouldn't trade it for anything. "Reynolds! The boss wants more champagne on the East Terrace, pronto," his supervisor barked. Jake nodded, grabbing a tray of flutes. As he navigated through the sea of designer gowns and tuxedos, he couldn't help but feel out of place. These people lived in a different world. One where medical bills didn't keep you up at night and where vacation wasn't just a fantasy. That's when he saw her. Eliza Montgomery, 33-year-old billionaire CEO of Montgomery Industries, stood alone by the balcony railing. The moonlight caught in her dark hair, and despite her perfect posture, something in her eyes looked lost. Their gazes met, and Jake felt a jolt of electricity. He quickly looked away, reminding himself that women like her didn't notice men like him. But she had noticed. "You're not enjoying yourself," she said as he approached with the champagne. It wasn't a question. Jake smiled. "Just doing my job, ma'am." "Ma'am?" She raised an eyebrow. "I'm not that old." "Force of habit," he replied. "My daughter says I'm too polite for my own good." "You have a daughter?" Something flickered across her face, interest, perhaps. Before Jake could answer, a drunken guest stumbled toward them, knocking into Jake and sending champagne flying right onto Eliza's designer dress. "I'm so sorry." Jake fumbled for his serving napkin. To his surprise, Eliza laughed. Not the polite, society laugh he'd heard her use with donors all evening, but something genuine. "Don't sweat it. This party was dead anyway." The commotion drew attention. Soon, a small crowd had gathered, including the event photographer and several guests with phones raised. That's when it happened. Someone mentioned the Kissing Booth fundraiser that had closed early, complaining they hadn't reached their goal. Eliza, perhaps tired of the stuffiness of her own gala, suddenly announced, "Look, the couple who kisses the longest wins. $10,000 to the charity from me if anyone beats the current record." The crowd murmured excitedly, but no one stepped forward. "What about you, catering guy?" she challenged, looking directly at Jake. "Or are you all talk and no action?" Jake knew he should walk away. This wasn't his world. But something in her eyes, a dare, a plea, made him respond, "Do you want to try it?" The crowd went wild. Phones came out to record what would surely be the social media moment of the year: billionaire Eliza Montgomery and a random caterer. What no one expected was what happened when their lips met. The kiss was supposed to be a publicity stunt, a moment of rebellion for Eliza and a story Jake would tell his buddies. But the moment their lips touched, something shifted. The world around them faded. Jake felt her initial stiffness melt away as her hands found their way to his shoulders. When they finally pulled apart, far sooner than any record-breaking attempt, the silence was deafening. "I need some air," Eliza whispered, then turned and fled through the crowd. Jake stood frozen, the taste of her expensive lipstick still on his lips, as whispers erupted around him. His supervisor appeared at his side, hissing, "You're fired, Reynolds." But Jake barely heard him. All he could think about was the look in Eliza's eyes just before she ran, not embarrassment or regret, but fear. Raw, unfiltered fear. By morning, the video had gone viral. Billionaire boss kisses caterer trended across platforms. Jake's phone wouldn't stop ringing, friends, local news, even a morning talk show. But the only call he cared about never came. 3 days later, Jake was kneading dough in his small bakery when the bell above the door jingled. He looked up, flour dusting his forearms, to find Eliza Montgomery standing in his shop, looking both out of place and somehow exactly where she belonged. "Your address was surprisingly easy to find," she said, her voice softer than at the gala. Jake wiped his hands on his apron. "Didn't expect to see you again. Figured I'd just be your 15 minutes of fame." "I fired my PR team for how they handled it," she admitted. "They wanted me to play it off as a drunken mistake." "Wasn't it?" Jake asked, trying to ignore how his heart raced at her presence. Eliza stepped closer, her designer heels clicking on his worn tile floor. "I haven't been drunk since college, and I don't make mistakes." "Then why are you here?" She took a deep breath. "To apologize for running. And, to see if what I felt was real." Before Jake could respond, the back door burst open and Lily raced in, school backpack bouncing. "Dad! I got an A on my..." She stopped short at the sight of Eliza. "You're the lady who kissed my dad on YouTube," Lily exclaimed. "Emma showed me at school. She said you're super rich and own like everything." Jake winced. "Lily, this is Ms. Montgomery. She's..." "Eliza," she corrected, kneeling to Lily's level. "And I don't own everything. Just a few boring buildings." "Do you own a pony?" Lily asked seriously. Eliza laughed, that same genuine laugh from the gala. "No, but I've always wanted one." Something in Jake's chest tightened as he watched them. This woman, who commanded boardrooms and made billion-dollar decisions, was chatting with his daughter about ponies and favorite ice cream flavors as if she had all the time in the world. When Lily went to do homework in the back office, Eliza turned to Jake. "She's amazing. She's my whole world," he said simply. "I can see why." Eliza hesitated. "Jake, I didn't just come to apologize. I came to ask you to dinner." Jake raised an eyebrow. "You asking me on a date, Ms. Montgomery?" "Eliza," she corrected again. "And yes, I am. Unless that kiss was just for show?" The memory of that kiss flooded back, and Jake stepped closer. Nothing about that felt like a show. Their second kiss, away from cameras and crowds, was even more electric than the first. What followed was a whirlwind. Eliza, used to controlling everything in her life, found herself helplessly falling for the straightforward baker and his precocious daughter. Jake, who had closed his heart after his wife's death years ago, discovered it still worked perfectly. But their worlds couldn't have been more different. Jake's life revolved around school pickups and making ends meet. Eliza's days were filled with board meetings and international calls. The press followed their every move, dubbing them Beauty and the Baker. Their first official date was at a small Italian restaurant Jake loved. Eliza arrived in jeans and a simple blouse, having changed from her usual power suit. Jake nearly dropped his water glass when he saw her. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Is it too casual?" Jake shook his head, unable to find words. "You look real." She smiled, understanding perfectly. "I wanted to be Eliza tonight. Not Montgomery Industries." Over pasta and wine, they shared stories. Jake told her about meeting his late wife in culinary school, their dreams of opening a bakery together, and how he'd finally done it 3 years after her death from cancer. Eliza spoke of growing up with the weight of the Montgomery name, of studying architecture before being pulled into the family business, of lonely achievements and empty accolades. "I haven't baked anything since I was a kid," she admitted. "My mother thought it was beneath us to cook." Jake's eyes lit up. "Then you're coming to the bakery tomorrow. I'll teach you how to make sourdough." The next day, flour-covered and laughing, Eliza felt more alive than she had in years. Jake stood behind her, guiding her hands as they kneaded dough together, his breath warm on her neck. When she turned to face him, their lips met naturally, as if they'd been doing this dance for years. Lily found them like that, giggling at the mushy stuff before demanding to join the baking lesson. The three of them spent the afternoon creating misshapen but delicious bread, and when Eliza had to leave for a conference call, she did so reluctantly. "This was the best day I've had in, maybe ever," she told Jake at the door. He brushed flour from her cheek. "There can be more days like this, you know." She wanted to believe him. As weeks passed, Eliza found herself scheduling meetings around Lily's dance recitals and Jake's baking classes. She kept a change of casual clothes in her office and learned to ignore the raised eyebrows of her executive team when she left early for personal matters. Jake, meanwhile, navigated the uncomfortable spotlight that came with dating one of the country's wealthiest women. Old friends made jokes about his sugar mama, while customers came to the bakery hoping to catch a glimpse of the famous couple. He endured it all with good humor, knowing that at the end of the day, it was just Eliza who would curl up on his worn couch, helping Lily with homework or discussing renovation plans for the bakery. But the honeymoon couldn't last forever. 3 months into their relationship, the differences became impossible to ignore. After a disastrous dinner with Eliza's board members, where Jake felt completely out of place, he finally voiced his doubts. "We're kidding ourselves, Eliza. I don't belong in your world, and you don't belong in mine." "That's not true," she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? Your friends look at me like I'm some charity case. My friends think you're slumming it for publicity. And Lily, she's starting to think we're living in some fairy tale." "Maybe we are," Eliza whispered. "Fairy tales aren't real," Jake said firmly. "And I can't let Lily get hurt when this inevitably ends." The pain in Eliza's eyes nearly broke him, but he stood firm. That night, they parted ways, both convinced they were doing the right thing. What Jake didn't tell Eliza was how Lily had come home crying the day before. Some kids at school had shown her a tabloid article suggesting Eliza was using Jake as a publicity stunt to humanize her corporate image. "Is Eliza just pretending to like us, Daddy?" Lily had asked, and Jake had no answer that felt honest. For Eliza, the breaking point had been the board meeting where her CFO had bluntly asked if her little baker fling was affecting her judgment on a major acquisition. She'd fired him on the spot, but the damage was done. The doubt had crept in, whispering that perhaps she was being naive, that love couldn't bridge such different worlds. For weeks, Jake threw himself into his bakery, expanding his menu and extending hours. Anything to keep his mind off Eliza. Lily grew quieter, often asking when they would see Eliza again. Each time, Jake's heart broke a little more. What Jake didn't know was that across town, Eliza was falling apart. For the first time in her life, success and money meant nothing. She canceled meetings, ignored calls, and spent nights staring at pictures of Jake and Lily on her phone. Her assistant, Maria, who had worked with Eliza for 7 years, finally confronted her. "I've never seen you like this, not even when your father died." Eliza looked up from her untouched lunch. "Like what?" "Human," Maria said simply. "You finally found something real, and you're letting it go because it's messy? That's not the Eliza Montgomery I know." "The Eliza Montgomery you know is a facade," Eliza admitted. "A carefully constructed image that's been cracking since the moment Jake kissed me." Maria sat down across from her. "Then maybe it's time to let it shatter completely." That conversation planted a seed, but Eliza needed time. She took a rare 2-week vacation, flying to her family's abandoned summer home in Maine where she'd spent her happiest childhood moments. There, surrounded by memories of a time before expectations and responsibilities, she began to sketch buildings again. Something she hadn't done since college. One design kept emerging, a multi-use space with a bakery, community areas, and sustainable living quarters. She drew it over and over, refining, imagining, dreaming of a life that combined her passions with Jake's. Meanwhile, Jake faced his own crisis. His landlord, an elderly man who had given Jake a break on rent when he first opened, had fallen ill. His son, now in charge, had different plans for the building. Then came the day that changed everything. Jake was closing up shop when his landlord walked in with devastating news: the building had been sold, and all tenants had 30 days to vacate. The bakery was Jake's life, his connection to his late wife, his means of supporting Lily, his identity. Without it, he had nothing. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Jake sat at his kitchen table surrounded by bills and rental listings, none of which he could afford. For the first time since his wife died, he allowed himself to cry silent, shuddering sobs that released years of held-back grief and fear. He thought of calling Eliza. His finger hovered over her name and his phone countless times. But pride stopped him. He couldn't bear to be her charity case, to confirm what her wealthy friends already thought of him. That same evening, Eliza sat alone in her penthouse, watching the sunset and realizing she hadn't really seen one in years. Her assistant entered with urgent news. The acquisition of a small commercial building downtown had been completed, but there was a problem with one of the tenants, a small bakery, refusing to leave. Eliza felt the blood drain from her face as she realized what she'd done. In her corporate autopilot, she'd purchased the building containing Jake's bakery, never connecting the addresses. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. Without thinking, she grabbed her keys and drove to the bakery. It was dark, but she could see light from the back kitchen. She knocked frantically. When Jake opened the door, the look of betrayal on his face told her he already knew. "You bought my building?" His voice was ice. "Was this your plan all along? To destroy me when you couldn't have me?" "No!" Eliza cried. "I didn't know, Jake. I swear I didn't know." "Right. The billionaire CEO doesn't know what property she's buying." He laughed bitterly. "Just go, Eliza. You've won. Take the bakery. Take everything." As he moved to close the door, Eliza blurted out, "I'm selling Montgomery Industries." Jake froze. "What?" "I'm selling the company. All of it." Tears streamed down her face. "These past weeks without you and Lily. I realized none of it matters. The money, the power, the respect, it's all meaningless if I'm alone." "Eliza, you can't." "I already have. The paperwork was signed yesterday." She stepped closer. "I kept thinking about that stupid kissing challenge. How it was supposed to be a joke, a moment of rebellion. But when you kissed me, Jake Reynolds, you woke something in me I didn't know was sleeping." Jake's expression softened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you. And Lily. And I'd rather have a small life filled with love than a big one filled with nothing." Jake pulled her into his arms, his anger melting away. "You crazy, beautiful woman. You don't have to sell your company to be with us." "I'm not doing it for you," she said, looking up at him. "I'm doing it for me. For the first time, I'm choosing happiness over expectations." That night, as they sat in Jake's small living room, Eliza revealed the truth she'd never told anyone. Her father's dying wish had been for her to take over the company, even though her passion had always been environmental architecture. For 10 years, she'd lived someone else's dream, growing more successful and more miserable each year. "The night of the gala," she confessed, "I was contemplating resigning. Then you walked up with that champagne tray, looking so genuine and unimpressed by all the wealth around you. When our eyes met, something just clicked." Jake brushed a strand of hair from her face. "So what made you run after we kissed?" Eliza looked down. "Fear. I felt something I'd never experienced before, like I was falling without a parachute. All my life, I've controlled everything. That kiss. I couldn't control how it made me feel." "And how did it make you feel?" Jake asked softly. "Like I was finally waking up." She met his eyes. "Like everything before you was just a rehearsal for real life." They talked until dawn, planning and dreaming. Jake shared his vision for expanding the bakery to include cooking classes for kids. Eliza revealed her sketches for sustainable urban spaces that brought communities together. "So what now?" Jake asked, holding her close. Eliza smiled. "Now I start over. I've kept enough shares to fund a foundation focusing on sustainable urban development. And..." She hesitated, "I bought a building." Jake tensed. "Not your building," she quickly added. "The abandoned one 3 blocks down. It has twice the space, better light, and I thought, maybe we could design it together?" Your bakery on the main floor, my foundation offices upstairs, and maybe a home for all three of us on the top floor? Jake stared at her, amazed. You've thought of everything. Not everything, she admitted. I haven't figured out how to convince this stubborn baker to marry me yet. Jake's heart stopped. Is that a proposal, Montgomery? Depends. Is it working, Reynolds? Their kiss was answer enough. The next morning, Lily found them asleep on the couch, still in their clothes from the night before, hands intertwined. She climbed between them, waking them with giggles and questions about breakfast. Is Liza staying forever now? She asked, eyes wide with hope. Jake looked at Eliza, waiting for her answer. If that's okay with you, Squirt, Eliza said, her voice thick with emotion. Lily's response was to throw her arms around Eliza's neck. Does this mean I get a mom again? The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Jake watched, his heart in his throat, as Eliza's eyes filled with tears. I would be honored to be your mom, she whispered. But your first mom will always be in your heart. I know, Lily said with the simple wisdom of children. Mom's in heaven, but she sent you to take care of us down here. The months that followed weren't easy. Eliza faced backlash from shareholders and business analysts who called her decision to sell controlling interest emotional and irrational. Former colleagues whispered that she'd lost her edge, that the baker boy had manipulated her. Jake struggled with his own demons. The fear that he wasn't enough, that someday Eliza would wake up and regret choosing his simple life over her empire. There were arguments about money, about parenting Lily, about the future of the bakery. But there was also joy, pure, unfiltered joy that neither had experienced before. Eliza discovered she had a talent for designing spaces that brought people together. Jake found that with Eliza's support, he could expand his bakery concept beyond what he'd ever imagined. The renovation of the abandoned building became their shared passion. Jake brought practical knowledge of what a working bakery needed, Eliza contributed sustainable design elements that would make the space unique. They compromised, argued, and created something neither could have envisioned alone. 6 months after that fateful night, Jake found Eliza on the rooftop of their still under construction building, staring at the sunset. Penny for your thoughts? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Just thinking about how different my life is now, she said, leaning into him. A year ago, I was closing a $100 million deal in Tokyo. Now I'm arguing with contractors about the right shade of blue for bakery walls. Jake tensed slightly. Any regrets? She turned in his arms. Only that I wasted so many years living someone else's dream. That night, under the stars on their rooftop, Jake got down on one knee. The ring wasn't expensive, a simple band with a small diamond, but the love in his eyes made it priceless. Eliza Montgomery, you crashed into my life like a hurricane, turned everything upside down, and somehow made it all make sense. Will you marry me? I already asked you first, she teased through tears. I need to hear you say it, he insisted. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. They were married 3 months later in the newly completed bakery, surrounded by flour-dusted counters and the smell of fresh bread. Lily served as flower girl and ring bearer, proudly walking down the makeshift aisle in a dress she and Eliza had picked together. The ceremony was small, just close friends and family, but a crowd gathered outside, drawn by the story that had captured hearts across the country. The unlikely romance between the billionaire and the baker had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that love could bridge any divide. Their vows were simple but profound. Jake promised to always bake Eliza's favorite cinnamon rolls when she was sad. Eliza vowed to never let the world make Jake doubt his worth. And they both promised Lily that their family would always come first. The kiss that sealed their vows lasted much longer than the one at the gala, though still not record-breaking. But this time, neither of them ran away. 1 year later, Montgomery Reynolds Bakery and Sustainability Center opened its doors. The viral video that started it all played on a small screen near the entrance, a reminder that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a challenge. The center quickly became the heart of the neighborhood. The bakery offered job training for at-risk youth. The upper floors housed Eliza's foundation, which provided grants for sustainable urban projects. And the rooftop garden, tended by Lily and her school friends, supplied fresh herbs and vegetables. On quiet evenings, after the bakery closed and Lily was asleep in their penthouse apartment, Jake and Eliza would sit on their rooftop, watching the city lights. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Jake would ask. And Eliza would smile, remembering the lost woman she'd been before a champagne spill and an impulsive challenge changed everything. "No, but I'm so glad we did." Their story spread far beyond the viral video.